looks like he's had his hair blow-dried. I think this thing is going to be gone by the end of the day. I'm just listening to the radio. It is rather fascinating as to where the other three have gone with the cubs. We don't know at this stage. We've got no idea where they are. The Styx Pride have moved a long way during the course of the morning. I don't think he likes our rain gear. You know that, Craig. I think he's offended by my navy blue poncho. You saw him look up in disgust at us. Oof. I know, he's well into it now. Oh, sorry about that, everybody. I didn't hear Craig's click until my brain processed it slowly afterwards. This is my rain gear. It's very fashionable, but of course one must be a little bit careful when one doesn't have a door. One doesn't want one's rain gear flapping in the face of a large male lion. Let's just go a little bit forward. I think we'll get a slightly better view. That's fantastic. I mean, it isn't to feed the buffalo, but it is fantastic to see how he's feeding. Now, we made mention of the carnassial teeth earlier on, and clearly this lion is using all three kinds of teeth that he has, the incisors and the canines, and then of course the carnassials, which are the premolars and molars. Well, Mike, good question, and let us be grateful for small mercies. You say, where are all the flies? Flies do not like this weather. They're a little bit like vultures, really. They are fair weather scavengers, and because they are poikilothermic or ectothermic, they derive their heat from the environment, which is why you don't really find them in winter time. It's quite cool this morning, probably I would say around, I'm going to say 21 degrees Celsius, 19 to 21 degrees Celsius, which is around about, well, say 70 or so Fahrenheit, and with a chilly wind, and that just means it's not going to be good for flies. They won't be able to fly around and lay their eggs in a carcass like this. There's simply not enough heat. Ooh, now he's having a go at the intercostals between the ribs. There we go. There goes a rib. And the number of sharp edges and things there must be in there. I mean, they must be all over the place. And how he's managing to lick away at that with his tongue and not cut himself, I don't know. Now, Byron Serrao has managed to get himself into the tent, and as Brent Leo Smith always says of me when I'm in the tent, while we suffer out here in the freezing cold, let us head back to Byron in his cosy little tent.
I'm so sorry you're suffering, James. Now, we are in the tent, but I'm doing a bit of maintenance around here at the moment. And there's a large bulge just next to me. Let's see what happens. A lot of water that has gathered in our tent. Look at that. Oh dear, I'll have to sort that out at some point. Now, we found some interesting creatures while while you've been watching lions. Now, firstly, not quite a creature, but because of all this rain, there's obviously a lot of moisture on the plants and that at the moment. Now, what I've managed to find is a beautiful little raindrop on a little leaf. And I just wanted to have a look at it under the microscope because it just looks fantastic. And you can just look at that. You can see the little hairs on the leaf and that lovely little raindrop right in the middle of the leaf. Isn't that great? You can see how the water obviously magnifies part of the leaf. I'll never forget, I think in science, and watch every now and then, if the wind blows, that little raindrop moves. You can see it, that beautiful, perfect drop. Now, I remember doing science at school, and we used to basically construct magnifying glasses using water and using the property of water to magnify something. So you can see that clearly there too. It's definitely magnifying part of the leaf. But look at it moving, and it's stayed completely still. A wonderful little raindrop. I'll show you. I'm going to just pull this out quickly. And what I'll do is show you the little raindrop, a tiny little raindrop on that little leaf. Isn't that great? Right. Now, Jean-Ray managed to find something interesting. Now, let me adjust the microscope. I hope I don't mess this up. Let's see. I think need to go out a little bit more. There we go. How's that? So we found a antlion that unfortunately didn't make it through the night, but some ant species were feeding on it. This could be interesting to see. Let's have a look at it. Let me just... Here we go. I'm getting better at this, I think. I think maybe James needs to give me a crash course perhaps in microscope etiquette. Is that a thing? Microscope etiquette, James? I'm sure James would be going, yes. There we go. There we go. Look at that. And you'll see the little ants crawling all over this antlion. Now, this is a dotted felt antlion. That's what this species of antlion is known as. Pulpurus sobrinus. Now, my Latin is a little bit rusty. I did do Latin at school, believe it or not. Sorry, I'm just trying to move so you can see a little bit more of this antlion. The head, and look at the ants feeding on it. Look at that. That's very interesting. So obviously this antlion is dead. I don't think they've got a particularly long lifespan. I'm not exactly sure how long it is, but I think once they turn into this flying antlion, they basically are made to mate, and then eventually they die off. And then we know the larva stage of the antlion is the one that they build those wonderful, almost like tunnels, little cone-shaped basically cone-shaped funnels in the sand. And they try and trap insects that walk through. But look at the beautiful colors and the dots on the wings. You can understand why it's called a dotted felt antlion, because of all those patterns over there. Be so careful with how you move this. Very sensitive. But look at those ants moving around too. This is fascinating. Just shows you how much actually goes on that we don't really see. And every now and then you can see the mandibles of these ants too. I'm fascinated by all the hairs. I mean, if you look at the antlion, you don't see it, but look at the hairs on the wings, those sharp little spikes on the wings. And the hairs around the body. Really is fascinating. Kirsten said it looked like the one ant was carrying something. Kirsten, I think it possibly bits and pieces of an antlion, to be honest. But it really is beautiful, and look at the legs there too. Now, Eric, I'm not sure if these ants will fully consume the carcass. I assume they would. And usually what happens is a colony of ants will come out, and if they find dead insects, they'll carry the insect back towards the colony, or they'll feed on it while it's out in the open. It could be anywhere from a day to maybe a bit longer. It depends. Now, judging by that antlion that we saw, there wasn't very much damage actually to the antlion, but I think it was killed last night and the ants only found it this morning. So who knows? It could potentially be finished by this afternoon or tomorrow if I put it back. Well, I will put it back out in the bush. Leave it, and I'm sure other ants will come and find it, and we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll finish it today or tomorrow. Not too sure. I'm going to see what else I can find and work on the maintenance of the tent a little bit, get some of that water out. While I do that, let's see how wet James is getting and what those lions are doing.
I do worry slightly that there's a great deal of talk of maintenance and water in relation to the tent. It is deeply concerning to me. Of course, the tent, well, I like to consider it sort of something of my domain. Not that I mind anyone else being in there, but we don't want to destroy it, do we, by the weather? Now, this is Tino, who's come up to have something to eat. And I think immediately apparent two things. Firstly, his ear is also floppy. And secondly, he has a problem. Well, he doesn't have a problem. He's got a much darker mane. He's definitely blessed with more testosterone than Nsuku, who has now absconded off to the north. Wendy, you're wondering if I think lions have taste buds. I know lions have taste buds. They're just not anything like the number that we have. And I keep forgetting exactly what the numbers are, but it's probably about 10% the number that we do, and they're also not nearly as sensitive. They don't pick up nearly the same range of tastes that we do. I mean, if I'm... the 15,000 comes to me as the number that is the number that humans have as taste buds. I think lions have got about 10% of that. We have 2 to 8,000, and lions have 470. So I'm almost correct, sort of. If we have 470, at least if we have 4,700 taste buds, which I suppose we could easily have, if it's somewhere between 2 and 8,000, well, then that would be about 10%. So they don't taste the same range of things that we do, which I suppose is quite nice for them. They're not, you wouldn't find a Michelin star chef serving up what that lion's eating. Well, not certainly without substantial modification. Now, windy and blustery out here now. I believe old Tristan's headed home to put the roof onto his car, because it's a little rainy down in the south. But I think we're okay here with just the covers on for now. So we'll sit here with these lions and carry on watching and seeing what they do. Now, James Richard, you're saying that you were thinking while we were watching this deceased buffalo that we need a number of different buffalo skulls in the tent, obviously to show the growth of the horns. James, yes, that would actually be very, very convenient and very good. We've just kind of run out of space in there, and hopefully that tent will one day become quite a lot larger than it is now, and we will have a full range of sort of museum pieces there. But at the moment, I'm afraid, Billy the buffalo is going to have to suffice for us. He's a big bull that lives on the top right-hand side of the top shelf there. I'm sure Byron would very happily show it to you. I have shown it just about to all of you, I'm sure. So normally in the tent these days we don't do a huge amount with that shelf of death because everybody has kind of seen those wonderful skulls that we have there. Let me move just very slightly forward so that we can keep looking at him, and you can see him using his carnassial teeth there. And I think there was another attempted mating over there. I just heard the male go, the female, sorry, give a growl. It may well have not have been an attempted mating, it may have been successful, but I wasn't looking that direction. So that's on Buffelshoek, everybody. That's to the north of where we're allowed to go. Let's go back onto this fellow here, enjoying his meal. It's quite a picturesque scene. Imagine this golden sun was shining on him. Not going to be much sun today. Right, now he's now eating the basically eating the femur off the hind leg there. And it's quite interesting to me. It's always interesting how small buffalo's femur actually looks. He's now having a go at the pelvis. And I mean, a buffalo is an enormous animal. It can weigh up to sort of 800 kilograms, even more sometimes. This one probably closer to around, I would have said, 250 or so kilograms, just shy of 600 pounds. And I'm always amazed at how small or how short the femur is, and the shank even. Having a wonderful meal there. And of course most of the mass of the buffalo carried on the shoulders. In fact, there are very few animals out here that don't have that arrangement, and a notable exception would be a zebra, which carries a huge amount of mass on its backside. Horses and the equids tend to have a huge amount more muscle mass on the back end than they do on the front. Rear-wheel drive versus front-wheel drive, and I don't really know why. Raquel, you won't find me talking about them being smelly very often. You say, what do lions smell like? We often talk about them being smelly. Raquel, I don't think lions smell like much at all, to be honest, and I think they spend a huge amount of time fastidiously cleaning off the smells that they have. I'm just looking back towards the male and the female. No, don't worry about it. Craigie's gone back to sleep. Raquel, they will be smelly after a kill like this. They will smell of, well, whatever they've had their faces inside, so they'll smell like the innards of a buffalo. But then they fastidiously clean themselves. And it is my opinion that, yes, while this has a disease avoidance role to play, I think that they do it to stop them smelling for other potential prey. And I think when they're sneaking through the bush, they have actually very little scent at all. If you compare the smell of these animals compared with hyenas or with wild dogs, you can't smell a lion. You can smell a wild dog at 100 paces. You can smell a hyena from a little bit closer. They don't smell quite as strongly as the dogs. I mean, that's obviously to our noses. But we have parked 3 meters, 2 meters sometimes from lions and leopards. I've never smelt anything of them. I don't think they smell. And I think that is a very carefully maintained situation. It's maintained by the fastidious cleaning, and I think it's also part of their evolution. They've evolved not to have a strong smell, and that helps them with hunting. Kirk, I think that's just to sort of feel what's going on. I've often thought of that myself. I said to you earlier that I thought he was going to kind of slice his tongue up, on all the sharp bits, and you said, well, why does he keep licking the food there, just like he's doing now, before he takes a bite? I think it basically just tells him where it's good to eat, where it's softer, where it's going to be the best sort of spot to attack next. But also, the tongue is like sandpaper, and there's 470 taste buds are like little hooks, and they will take off meat every time he has a lick at the skin or at one of the bones. Justin, I'm afraid I cannot answer this question. You say, what grade of sandpaper is a lion's tongue? Well, it's a good question. There's the other one. Nsuku at the back there has got a nasty limp. I've just noticed him now, walking with a fairly nasty limp. Justin, I don't know, how do you grade sandpaper? Rough. It's pretty rough. I'm not sure exactly how one, or what the grading on sandpaper is. Well, I think that we will sit here probably for another 10 minutes or so, and then we might press on and see what else is going on around here, and then maybe pop back towards the end of the drive. But we have spent a substantial period with these fellows. Where Karula was last seen. Just see if she isn't still around. Our queen, we do miss her dreadfully when we don't see her. Right, Tristan is back in his now Flintstone mobile, and he'd like to tell you what he's going.
Indeed, James, we are back in our Flintstone mobile. Just need a little hole punched through the floor here and I'll be able to run like Fred Flintstone. Even got the belly to match these days. So yes, we had to run quickly just to get a cover on. The rain while we were with those Styx Lionesses was really not very pleasant. It started to come down quite a bit. So we just quickly came back to get a cover. But while we were sitting with the Styx, we had audio for a herd of elephants that sounded like north of the lion. So we're back in that area now, and we're just trying to have a look to see if we can see any sign of these elephants in and around this area. They were mobile towards the road that we're currently on, and so hopefully they're going to pop out somewhere in front of us here. The lionesses and the cubs, they were starting to look for a little bit of thicker bush. They were kind of mobile into a thicket, so I don't think the visual on them is good anymore, but I think we had a great sighting anyway, and really, really nice to see those cubs. And it's Murphy's Law now that we've put this roof on that the rain has subsided quite substantially, so no longer really needed, but I'm sure it's going to come and go. It's that kind of a day where the weather is going to come in and there's going to be rain every now and then. We're going to see sort of periods of dry and then wet, which is great. It's a nice kind of rain this. It's really good for this area after the drought that we've had. We've had times where we've had really no rain for a number of years now, so nice soft soaking rain is really good for the growth of grass species, and it doesn't cause too much erosion, and so really this kind of weather is perfect. It's also nice and cool, which means there's not going to be too much evaporation today, which allows the rain that has fallen to soak in and to actually get down to the roots of the grasses. regularly. And so yes, I got to see those animals from a young age all the way through up into my teen years. And so I think that's where the passion really started. They instilled a respect and a love for nature in me from early on. And so I was very, very fortunate in that I had that upbringing. After that, I ended up going to university in Johannesburg and kind of wasn't really sure what I was going to be doing. And I had some friends that worked in a lodge in this area, and I went to go visit them. And we chatted about doing guide training, and they said to me that there was a course that was run through this lodge. And so I was considering it, and then I managed to get to Kenya, where I spent some time at an elephant rehabilitation center that rehabbed baby elephants back to the wild. And that's really where it kind of kicked off again, and it reignited this passion. And I then ended up coming back into this area and doing my qualifications and becoming a guide. So I was very fortunate in that I got to experience all of this from a young age. Alright, so what we have here is two male impalas having a little sparring match. So these two are not actually in a rut, and they're not fighting for mating. This is all just practice. Alright, so you'll find that it's kind of, they bounce around a little bit and chase each other around, and they'll push their heads down and, you know, kind of lock horns for a little bit, but it's nothing too serious. It's all just sort of play fighting, and it's very, very, very important that they do this, because when it comes time to mate and when the rutting season starts in April, these guys will have to compete for females. And so how they do that is obviously by putting their horns down, and they then push each other around, and they establish a dominance by strength. And so when they do this, they're now practicing the technique. They're also strengthening those muscles in the shoulder and neck areas, and they're making it a lot better for when they actually do have to compete properly. They'll be in far better physical shape, as well as have a far better technique. So you'll see this quite commonly at this time of the year. These two males that you're seeing now are both probably close to about 3 years old, 3.5, somewhere there. And so this will in all likelihood be their first time that they're going to compete for mating. Alright, Impala females will mate already from their first year, whereas the males, they have to wait a little bit and grow some horns and get some size to actually be able to compete. So generally their real first kind of mating is only at 3.5, 4 years old. But this weather is perfect for this as well. You'll find that a lot of the animals are going to be quite lively today, particularly the antelope species. The soft drizzle will liven them up. They'll have lots of moisture in the grass, so they won't have to really travel to water too much, and they'll have a lot of energy to expend. So you'll see them running around quite a lot, and they'll be quite active during the day today. So I'd imagine you'll see quite a few impalas fighting like this and sparring and running around and jumping. And if we find the little baby impalas, you'll find that they run around and bounce around in this kind of weather. So perfect weather if you're an antelope. Now we're kind of in line of where we had those elephants. I haven't seen any signs of them. There's no tracks of them coming out yet. I'm just going to continue around this road a little bit and just see if maybe they've popped out a little bit further south of us, but so far no sign of them. If we don't have any luck here, I'm just going to loop back to the west a little bit and see if we can maybe pick them up. Alright, so while we're kind of looking for these elephants and trying to see where they are, we're going to go back to Byron, who I believe is enjoying a delicious brew in his tent.
Steph has joined us in the tent this morning. Or at least his mug has. See, when the boss is away, we basically do what we want. So it was getting a bit chilly in the tent, and you know, I think it's a bit unfair that we get cold. So we went and got some coffee, condensed milk coffee. So it's a bit sweet. Jeanre's got a sugar rush at the moment. Now I know James was chatting to you a little bit about the coarseness of the lion tongue and how rough it is, and he was saying he's not sure how the sandpaper is graded. So James, the sandpaper is graded by its grit basically, and it gets given a number. Now the finer sandpaper is numbered, I'll call it between 220 and 300. The higher you go, the finer the grit of the sandpaper. So very fine will be up to 500 or 600. And then the lower you go with the numbers, so 120, it starts becoming a lot coarser. 100, and I would say, I wonder if a lion tongue isn't maybe somewhere around 50, somewhere around there. Very, very low, very coarse, very rough, and can literally smooth, or lick the skin or hide off a buffalo. Incredibly rough tongues. Now, I've been wandering around again, managed to find the remains of a bagworm, little pupa, rather. Yeah, that's what it is. They pupate in here, and you can see it. I find it fascinating how these bagworms are able to put these little acacia thorns together, and then they'll live inside there until they eventually pupate out, and then they'll come out. Now, it's fascinating, really is fascinating, and I know very little about this. I'm not sure what they use to actually combine these little thorns or sticks together. Sometimes grass, little pieces of grass that they'll find, grass seeds and little grass stems that they'll stick together. So it's very interesting to see these little bagworms, or the remains of these bagworm pupas lying around. While I was walking around out too, there's still quite a bit of bird activity. All this rain, I think they're quite happy. It's cooled the temperature down quite a bit. And I heard something interesting fly over. A Senegal lapwing. Now, I've not seen a Senegal lapwing for quite some time in this area, but that is it over there. That beautiful bird, the Senegal lapwing. Now, I was just trying to think when last I saw Senegal lapwings. I have seen them on Djuma before, but not for quite some time. So it's nice to hear them flying over. So they are in the area. It's slightly different lapwing species compared to the crowned lapwing and the blacksmith lapwing that we're used to seeing. Now, I'm going to continue to sip on the coffee and try and warm the cockles of my heart. Let's head back to James, who's got a beautiful kudu to show you.
It's a young male kudu, and it's an unusual sighting for two reasons. One, that he seems to be entirely on his own, but there could be others around the bushes somewhere here. And the second is that he's not reacting to us. He's just kind of going about his day, peering behind the bushes, underneath the termite mounds, and not running away from us, which is wonderful. Let me just sneak forward a little bit. Why he's on his own, that interests me quite a lot. He is definitely a herding animal. And you can see he's a he, of course, by the fact that he's just starting to get little horns, but he's already big. I mean, he's already at least, I think he must weigh a good 180 kilograms by now. Pushing 400 pounds. He's tall. Now, we've been talking quite a lot of late in camp around the subject of camouflage and the reasons for stripes and not having stripes and who's got stripes for what reason, etc. And we think that that particular striping is quite camouflaged when these animals are walking through thick bush. When the light is being broken up by the leaves above, then those stripes just kind of break the outline a bit and make it slightly probably more difficult to pick up an animal like that. But I'm always just slightly, there's a piece of me that doesn't like saying that, because to me the most obvious part of that particular sighting is the whiteness of the stripes. They're the most obvious things to see there. And of course, when you look at the kudu now, it's not in fact being camouflaged so much as it is hiding. And that's the other thing we've been discussing. We often say things like, gee whiz, look at how that leopard is camouflaged behind that tree, when in fact you could probably hide a fairly substantial pink flamingo behind the tree. It's just the fact that it's behind the tree that makes it invisible. true camouflage is, I don't think, particularly well mastered by the mammals. True camouflage is mastered by things like the saw-toothed flower mantid and crab spiders and that sort of thing that have precisely mimicked the surroundings, which means that they're indistinguishable from the surroundings unless you look extremely closely. Hiding behind a bush doth not camouflage make. It's the ability to blend completely. Now remember, you can talk to us, #SafariLife, questions at WildEarthTV if you would like to. Ask us questions, send us any of your comments. I think it is very special. And on a potentially unpleasant morning like today, we have managed to find both our prides of lions, well, sort of, and most of our males. I mean, we've had a pretty good lion quota for the day, and now one single Kudu, and of course the torrid experience of Byron in the tent. Torrid because I'm seriously worried about the state of my tent after the storm yesterday, and I'm not getting reassuring comments from that end. The fact that he's live indicates to me that everything must be okay in there. I'm sure he will look after it. Won't you, Byron? Yes. I know you can hear me. I'm watching you. Kelly, you're wondering if I responded to one of Byron's jokes yesterday. What joke, Kirsten? Oh, that I was fired. Kelly, no, I didn't. I was actually sitting in the final control. The reason, for the rest of you who perhaps missed Byron's hilarious joke, was that, of course, we had Tristan starting up, and then we had Marnus on his interview drive, and so there was a question about whether the other presenters had left, and Byron quipped that yes, I had been fired for a general sort of lack of effort around the camp. That is not true. I did respond by putting a fairly substantial snake in his bed, Kelly, and it bit him on the toe during the course of the night, and that's why he's in the tent this morning and not walking. Not really. Let's have one last look at the kudu, and then we will move on. That Kudu is definitely looking for friends, and where his friends have gone is a mystery I fear me we shall not be able to unravel. Let's press on, Craig. I'm Kudu'd out right now. In the meantime, Tristan in the Flintstone mobile is on his way down to the lions. I don't know if he's there yet, but he will tell you.
So welcome back, guys. Still no sign of the Ellies. I did go past where we had those Styx lionesses, and there's also no sign of them. They seem to have disappeared into that deep, dense thicket. So we're still just scratching around in the area, trying to see if we can find any sign of these elephants. And I believe you've been discussing James's firing and Marnus's interview, and it just reminded me of last night when we were talking about khaki fever and with Byron, and I had a couple comments to say about it, and apparently we cut off, and so no one actually heard what we were talking about. But I was saying that of all in the camp, I would imagine Byron would probably be the best qualified to answer the khaki fever question. He seems to have a good grasp of that concept, and following that, he also seems to have developed a little khaki fever of himself in the camp. Marnus, when he was on his interview, seemed to develop a nice bromance between the two of them, and they ended up bonding quite extensively. So we'll just have to monitor that and see how it goes. We'll have to check their Facebook feeds and see if the bromance continues in the next few weeks. But it's all very saucy. It's got everybody talking and everybody gossiping about it. There have been lots of little whispering conversations in the corner of the dinner table between the two of them. So it'll be quite interesting to see what goes on and where it all goes for Byron and Marnus. And like I say, so Byron is busy shaking his head in approval apparently, so he agrees with us, and rightly so, Byron. I think you guys would make a great couple. So the rain seems to have just started to pick up again, so I'm pretty sure these elephants have probably found themselves a nice dense thick area. They often do in rain like this and kind of windy weather. They try and find a thicketed drainage line where they can get in and get out of that rain and that wind. An elephant is very reliant on its hearing, and so when it's very, very windy and lots of rain, it becomes very difficult for them to hear, and so they go into thicker areas where it's a little bit easier to kind of figure out what's going on. And so I'm pretty sure they've tucked themselves into that thicket. We're still just doing loops around trying to find them, but like I say, no footprints or anything that we can see just yet. And I know it's early morning and I didn't have my coffee this morning, but I definitely did hear them, and so did Dave, so they are here somewhere. We will find them eventually. It's just going to be a matter of patience and perseverance. Maybe they've taken a leaf out of the Kudu's book and got camouflaged and concealed this morning. I'm not sure if maybe we need to get James on the scene here and see if he can maybe relocate them for us, since he's the expert on camouflage and concealment. It's been quite interesting this morning. Yesterday the birds were really active. We had a lot of birds everywhere, and this morning it's been a little bit quieter. We haven't seen too many birds even. I'm sure with the weather it's got something to do with it. They often, don't like to fly too much. Actually, speaking of birds, we have one right in front of us. There's a beautiful lilac-breasted roller that is just in your frame. Sorry, I'm just going to try and move back. There we go. So you can see him perched there, and you'll notice that it's all fluffy and kind of puffed up. And so the reason why is that this little bird will be quite cold, and so what they do is they puff their feathers up, and that traps air against the body, and the warm blood that's in the body will warm that little air up, and it will keep a little pocket of warm air around it, and it's basically insulating it. So it's like us putting on a jersey. They just puff everything up and keep themselves nice and warm. Now I would imagine that most of the birds today will be spending most of their time on branches like this. There's not going to be too much flying, particularly if the rain really starts to get quite heavy. Their wings get sodden and it becomes very difficult for them to fly. It's a lot heavier, so they expend far more energy. And given that we've had fairly good weather the last few days, it's actually nice for them to probably just to have a bit of a rest and recuperate a little bit. So we should see probably a lot of raptors down on the trees this afternoon, or during the day. But yeah. So Dina would like to know if I keep a bird list. I do indeed keep a bird list, Dina. It's one of those things when you start getting interested in birds, you start to make notes and make records and keep lists as much as you can. It becomes a little bit addictive, I'm afraid. So my list is still growing. There's still a lot of areas within South Africa and Africa that I would like to see and to explore, and there's certain areas that have lots and lots of endemic species. So my bird list currently in this, for my life so far in Southern Africa, is just about 500. And like I say, I still need to go and explore parts of KZN, as well as the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe, which have lots of endemic species. And also I need to do a lot more birding on the coastlines. I haven't done too much on the coastal areas, and so there's a lot of species in the coast that I still need to get. But for the area that we're in, my bird list is pretty good and pretty strong, so it's very good pastime to have. I really enjoy it. But we're going to leave this little lilac-breasted roller on its perch, and we're going to go back to James and see what he's up to.
He's got a Francolin, everyone, And we were driving along the road towards Buffelshoek Dam, and Craig said, "Hang on, that's not a normal Francolin, is it?" And I said, "I didn't see it," and I reversed, and then I said, "No, well, it's a Coqui Francolin, but it's a very beautiful Francolin, isn't it?" And I was saying that I didn't think it would fancy being called not normal, but I think it's a fairly normal Coqui Francolin with its gorgeous copper gold head. And it's doing its non-Coqui call. The Coqui call is Coqui, Coqui. And I think this one is a more territorial call. Look at the colours, detail in the feathers. These Francolins are astounding. They are camouflaged, beautifully camouflaged, because they blend very crisply into the background. Here we are. See? Camouflage. I'd love to do a quick poll of our viewers watching right now to know how many of them, if they wrote camouflage in a word processing document right now, would find it underlined in red because they'd misspelt it. I misspell that word every single time I write it. Let's just go a little bit forward. He's still there. I'd love to know how many of you have the same problem. In fact, as I sit here, I'm slightly confused as to how to spell it. I think I've got it.
I know, James, you got some gremlins running around, I think, on the vehicle. Let me just turn everything off here. Things are going a bit chaotic. Now, Tristan, very funny joke. I don't know what to say, really. Jealousy, perhaps? I'm not sure. Tristan, well, I think you're going to fit in very well, yeah. If you have a sense of humor like that. Now, I've managed to find one of my favorite little butterflies. Chandra says it looks like a banana. Have a look. I suppose it does kind of look like a banana, but it's not. It is a broad-bordered grass yellow that came flying through the tent. Now I think it's trying to get out of the rain, perhaps, although there are a few other butterflies flying around. And I just love this color. I mean, it's a bit tricky to see. Here we go. There's the head. Look at that. We saw one of these the other day too. Beautiful, and it really is. They are one of my favorite butterflies, just purely because they move around, and you often see them sitting in little puddles or at the edge of a puddle, and trying to lap, I suppose, enjoy some of the moisture and the water from there. But you'll find them in big groups usually, and a few of them sitting around a water hole. This exquisite yellow just sitting around, which is really, really great to see. It sounds like it's starting to rain quite a bit again, so I am glad that we are in the tent this morning. It's a beautiful butterfly. Now, it's interesting. I spoken about the rain a few times and how it affects the animals. Now, it's funny. It's difficult game viewing in heavy rain. Obviously, heavy rain is not ideal, but drizzle like this, you do still get a lot of movement, and I think Tristan touched on it, where you get to see a lot of antelope, such as the impala, those impala males were play fighting almost. I don't think it was proper fighting, but you do get, these animals are, I wonder if rejuvenated is the right word. There's rain, there's moisture on the vegetation. It's great for the animals, and you do see a lot more activity. But especially from predators, you will find predators moving around, and as we've seen this morning, they hunt in the rain too. But it reminds me of a story, actually, not just with the animals moving around, but we were out on a safari one afternoon, and we were sitting with the Pride of Lions, and they had a buffalo kill. And I think there were 5 or 6 guests on my vehicle, and while we were sitting, we had a wonderful view of these lions. There was a lot of activity. They were fighting. They were trying to get the best piece of meat they could possibly get in this kill, or from this kill. And while we were out there, we could see the clouds start building. Almost like yesterday, but these were a lot more ominous. You could see the dark clouds. They were approaching fairly fast. And I said to the guests, because we were quite far, we were about at least a good half an hour drive from the camp. So I said, I think we need to head back. So we quickly started the vehicle and off we went. And while we were driving, we could see the storm getting closer and closer. And the next thing, the heavens opened and it poured. Not a light drizzle like this. It poured with rain. The guests were just about hiding under the seats. They had their ponchos over their heads, covered up. Now, obviously, I can't wear a poncho because I've got to see where the road goes. So I had my hat on, hand over my face, trying to block the rain. And it does become impossible to see. It becomes absolutely impossible to see. And we were caught in this torrential downpour. So we eventually made it back to camp, completely soaked. And I couldn't say anything. I laughed. I thought, well, these guests might complain, and I'm not sure how they're going to feel about this torrential storm that we've just had, and how wet we are, and a bit chilly after that. So we just arrived back at camp. And I said, well, that was quite an experience, and they all burst out laughing, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. We had a great lion sighting. We got a real African experience, being caught in the bush, caught in the rain while out in the bush. So we eventually quickly went, and everybody showered and got changed and headed back down to the deck and started having a few drinks and cocktails, just to basically laugh and share stories about how we all felt in this huge downpour and this huge storm. But it was a great experience, and I suppose that's the thing when going on safari. Maybe that's a tip of the day for today. Is Byron's tip of the day. Doesn't matter what you are experiencing, what weather, enjoy your safari, because it's Africa and you can never tell what kind of weather you're going to get. It does change daily out here, especially in summer. Could have rain like today, or a storm like last night, or extremely hot conditions like we did yesterday. Now, Tristan's got one of my favorite animals he'd like to show you.
So welcome back, guys. As you can see, we've managed to locate on at least one elephant. It looks like a really, really nice big bull. He's currently just moving around in very dense bush, but it looks like he's slowly but surely making his way out and towards us. But I don't know if you can see there, he's got a really nice set of tusks. Often in this area we don't see too many big bulls with really large tusks, and he's got quite a nice set. They're not massive by any stretch of the imagination, and they're not the biggest that I've ever seen or that we can get in this area, but they are very, very nice and symmetrical, which is really, really good. And I believe Byron was chatting to you guys about weather, and that he gave a tip about no matter what the weather is, to enjoy the safari, and that is very, very true. I don't know what gave that elephant a fright all of a sudden. He seems to have come up upon something that he didn't like at all and has reared backwards, and can't see anything. Like I say, it is very dense and thick where he is, but he's not too perturbed, so I don't imagine it would be anything to worry about. And if it was something like a predator, it probably would have run off and we would have been able to have seen it. So he's just maybe a bird or something that gave him a fright. You sometimes find the Francolins moving around in the grass. They don't notice them until they're right on top of them. But I'm just going to try and go a little bit forward and just see, maybe we'll get a better gap here somewhere. And like I was saying with Byron, saying that, no matter what the weather, it's really true. Some of my best game drives have actually been in the rain. You get really interesting sightings. The animals tend to be a little bit more active for longer periods of time, given that it's a lot cooler. And so we tend to see a lot more activity in rainy weather. And also you often get really unusual sightings, given that it's very, very dark and cool. Sometimes the nocturnal species, like things like aardvarks and pangolins and white-tailed mongoose and civets, will often be running around in weather like this. Even though it's daylight, it's still cool enough and dark enough that they can get away with doing it. So you will find it sometimes. But this Ellie is really not playing the game. No matter where we move, he seems to just be moving back into thickets. He's completely disappeared, and I would say that is a very good example of concealment at work right there. So I don't think we're going to chase him too much more. Like I say, it gets really very dense in there, and so we're not going to go bashing around and chasing him around. But luckily we've got a really nice view, and it's at least confirmed to Dave and I that we're not crazy and that there were actually elephants in the area. So quite glad that we got a visual of him. But let's carry on and see. Maybe this bull is on the back end of a herd, and we can possibly find the rest of them. So Trident would like to know if poaching is a big problem for elephants. Well, in this part of South Africa, not really, not at the moment. It was in the 1980s, but now not so much. Most of the problems that we have in this area are more related to rhinos at this stage. But in East Africa and Central Africa, the poaching of elephants is really bad at the moment. They reckon that we're losing an elephant in Africa every 15 minutes. So when you think about how long 15 minutes is and you add that up during the day, that is a lot of elephants dying every single day. So the poaching within Africa, yes, is very bad. Here in the Kruger National Park and the Sabi Sands, no, we don't have a problem just yet. But as the numbers of elephants decrease worldwide and within all the other reserves in Africa, so we're going to have a situation where the poachers are going to start moving down towards where we are, because we still have a very healthy population of elephants, and potentially then start trying to get to our elephants. So fingers crossed that they don't ever get here, and the right to prevent poaching. But yes, it does happen in Africa, and hopefully we'll never get here. But while we carry on, guys, going to go back to James and see what he's up to. Hopefully he's got something interesting to show you.
I'm afraid the last interesting thing we had was the golden-headed Coqui Francolin, and I do apologize for our loss of signal there. I'm not sure what happened there. We were absolutely fine, of course, and then it just suddenly left us. Anyway, we'll try and figure it out at some stage. I was asking you, of course, how many of you struggle to spell the word camouflage, and I was also then going to give a list of words that I can never spell correctly the first time I write them. Hierarchy is one of them. I always get it wrong. I leave out one of the R's. And silhouette, never get it right. And of course, slightly less tastefully, the word diarrhea is almost impossible to spell. Especially the old, I think in America you spell it slightly differently from the way we spell it here. We use the British spelling, which is nigh on impossible. Yep. CC, you reckon you also get camouflage wrong? You get the vowels all mixed up in the wrong place? Yeah, I do the same thing. A silhouette. Yeah, and most of you say, some of you said you get it wrong quite a lot, but many of you reckon that you get it right as well. Well, I think spelling is kind of, I wonder, you know, dyslexia, which of course is something now that we know people used to be written off as idiots if they had dyslexia, that they couldn't learn to read or write quickly enough, and we now know it's simply a difference in the way that the optical nerve interprets the brain interprets signals sent to it by the optical nerve, and it's got nothing to do with intelligence at all. And I wonder if it isn't some kind of spectrum where those of us who can't spell, I'm a dreadful speller. I've certainly never been diagnosed as dyslexic, but I wonder if there isn't a spectrum, and I suspect that I'm fairly far along that spectrum. My spelling has been dreadful from the time I picked up a pencil. much to my father's chagrin. He assumed it was because I didn't read enough, which I didn't as a child, but I still can't spell, and I read quite a lot now. Camouflage, silhouette, diarrhea. Luckily, I don't have to write diarrhea too often. Byron says from the tent that he has trouble spelling words like cat or dog. Yes. or Matt. That's because Byron's actually never read a book from cover to cover. He does read the internet quite a lot, though. I suppose that sort of counts. Although, Byron, you'll find that the spelling on Facebook is really fairly appalling. Cat, dog, or Matt. Yeah, no, those are tough ones, Byron. You mustn't worry about that. Try and spell hippopotomonstrosesquipedalophobia, and when you've got that right, then you're okay. I'm afraid the animal side of things has dried up slightly. That's fair enough, Byron. Apparently he struggles to know how many T's to put at the end of those words. I'm assuming he means the word Matt and the word cat, because dog, of course, doesn't have a T at the end of it, Byron. It's got a G. For game drive. Hello, Raquel. You were asking how often it is that I have to write the word diarrhea. Raquel, did you spell diarrhea correctly in your question there? I hope you did. Raquel, not very often, but when the odd occasion has arisen, I'm trying to think of one now. I can't think of one where I've had to write diarrhea, but I know that I can't spell it, and I know that I've many, many times tried. Very good question. How often do I have to spell diarrhea that I know I can't spell it? One day someone is going to discover the daily journal that I keep, which is a completely boring sort of incident report of my days. I mean, I'm not sure why I do it, but I keep one on a daily basis, and they're going to see just how dreadful my spelling is, because of course it's kept on paper. I write it by hand, and most of the words there are incomprehensible. Thank you, Maggie M. Right, there we are. So thank you very much. I think I was almost correct, Maggie M. You sent us through some information on Australia Day. So if you have just joined us, Australia Day is today in Australia, which means it's nearly finished. And I was confused as to whether Australia Day was the same as Anzac Day. It is not. And I was correct that Anzac Day is a wartime sort of celebration or commemoration of the contributions Australian forces, I think, made to the First and Second World Wars, I think. And I think it's Antipodean forces. I think the New Zealanders get in on that act as well, if I'm not mistaken. So the Kiwis and the Australians. And I think included in that would be the Battle of Gallipoli, which I don't know a huge amount about. All I know is that it was a horrendous occasion where I think a fairly substantial number of Australian troops met their ends in the First World War, I think. Please tell me. I'm shocked and horrified I don't know that. That's an elephant, everybody. Let's just go a little bit forward. We're just going to wipe the lens. It is getting a little spotty with rain. There, the elephants. They're moving very gently. Well, yes, that's Craig, everybody. Say hello, Craig. They're just moving gently to the south. Sorry, it's not Craig at all, it's Batman, yes. AKA the Maltese Root Canal. There we go. Oh, I've parked superbly. See that, Craig? I've got the only piece of green vegetation between us and the elephant, perfectly in line with the elephant. That's better. You might just be able to hear the soft pitter-patter of the rain. And Penny Pine, you were asking if we'd built stick shelters for the lions. No, and we don't build them for the elephants either. But interestingly, if there was an animal I would build one for, it would probably be an elephant, because their skin apparently ain't waterproof. Now, I don't know how that works. I suspect it doesn't mean that it's totally porous. What is that elephant doing? Trying to pull out a piece of root or something, I think. But I think it probably means that their skins are quite not totally porous, but a certain amount of water obviously gets through them. That would inspire me to build them a shelter of sticks. They'd have to be quite big sticks, though. Maybe even logs. Eric, an interesting one from you about the structure of an elephant's foot and how many toes it has. Well, strictly speaking, it doesn't really have toes at all. It's just got a great big sort of stamp on the end of its leg. They do have 5 toenails on the front and 4 on the back, and which correspond to toes. But if you were to cut open an elephant's foot, if you were to do an autopsy on an elephant's foot, you would find all 5 digits sort of in various states of fusing with each other inside the elephant's foot. But they don't, especially in an old elephant, mostly the nails are gone. And even once an elephant reaches sort of 10 years old, sometimes 3 in the front and 1 at the back are the only ones that are left. Sometimes you get all 5 and 4 at the back, but it's not usual, it's not common. Now, they're in Torchwood, so they're just to the eastern side of where we're allowed to go, so that's why I'm not getting any closer to them. They're very relaxed around us, which is always nice to see. There's that rather irksome hanging bit. They are moving slowly. Let's just carry on following them. It's a very small herd, about 4 of them or so. Here we go. They're coming out. I'm going to sneak a little bit forward, Craig. I think we might get them round through this bush. Alright, we're going to wait and see if we can't get a better view of these elephants. Tristan has something that is probably not very happy to be wet today.
Indeed, James. He doesn't look very satisfied with his life at the moment. And this is what we call a pin-tailed Whydah. When he is in his full breeding colours, these little birds go under quite a drastic change during the summer months. You can see it's just getting rid of some of the rain there that's falling on it. When you see them in winter, they will look completely different. They lose that long tail and they become all drab and brown in coloration. And then as summer comes and breeding starts to kick in, so they then grow this tail out and this change in coloration comes and we get this white and black with this bright red beak. So the female will stay drab, she doesn't change like the male does, and he will then try and impress her with his plumage and his coloration and his really long tail. And you can see why they get the name pin-tailed Whydah, is that those little tail feathers coming down are all very, very thin and narrow, much like little pins coming out of the back, and so that's where it's gotten its name from. Now, they're not the most common bird to see in this particular area. You do see them a lot if you go further west into the escarpment, up onto the Drakensberg Mountains. Lots of them up that way, but I haven't seen too many in this area for the last few years, so quite a nice little find. And actually yesterday Dave and I came past here and we spotted this guy, but it was flying around all over the place and really couldn't get a decent visual. And so quite chuffed today that he's sitting right out on the branch, nice and open for us. Which is really, really cool. It's called a pin-tailed Whydah, for those of you that didn't get the name. Like I say, it's P-I-N and then tailed Whydah. I will show you guys now in the book. If you have a look here, this is this guy on the top, and that's what they look like when they do not have their breeding coloration. That is the female, but in the male will go the same way, and then when they go into the breeding, it goes into this color. So there we go, pin-tailed Whydah. Fairly common throughout South Africa, like I say, but I haven't seen too many here. So very, very pretty little bird. Very happy with that. Alright, let's carry on and see what else there is. I believe the Ellies have decided to come out into the open, so we're going to go back to James and have a nice visual of the elephants.
They're about to disappear again, but we've just had a really interesting interaction, which I'll tell you about once that... Oh, shame, he's lost the bottom part of his tail. I'm going to sneak slowly... In fact, I'm not. I'm going to go around here. What happened there? The matriarch of this little herd, there are only 4 of them, is very young. She's probably only about 20, I would say, maximum. And I suspect she's definitely got 1 calf that's hers, maybe 2, and I think the other one's a sibling, rather like the arrangement with that short trunk herd that we see, that many of you will know. But what happened was they came across, she obviously decided they needed to come this way, and the young bull who you saw as you came to us stopped, and he stopped to have an interaction with us. And which the young bulls do. They stop under the trees and then they will just look and pretend to be feeding around you because they find it a bit entertaining, I think. But what she did was she stopped and she turned and she kind of walked towards him and shook her head and then walked off and then waited for him, and he wouldn't come with her. And she got a little bit upset with him, and you could see that she was trying desperately to make him leave us alone and come with her. She wasn't happy that he was spending time near this unfamiliar thing. I think that could be a sibling, you see. That's the matriarch coming into view now. She's very obviously the largest female, but she's not big, she's not old. Maybe she's a little bit older than 20. No, I think she's about 20. Now, it's possible those are both hers. And the young bull, well, I mean, he must be hers too, so... I don't know. Very difficult to figure out what the dynamic is. Maybe she's a bit older, maybe she's 25. Which would, in theory, have given her enough time to have 3 calves, but that's... No, in fact, you know what? They cannot be. You can see them, that little one's definitely hers. The other 2 are about the same age, though. They're certainly not far enough far enough apart for them to both be hers. Now, elephants do sometimes have twins. It's very, very, very rare, though. And I'm not sure if it's more or less likely with her first calves or with her first pregnancy. Now, what they're all doing, they're all digging in the sand here. They're not picking up grass. There's lots of grass around. They're not looking for marula fruits. They're all finding bits and pieces of sand to dig at. And I wonder if this weather hasn't softened the ground to the point that they're able to pick up some kind of root or tuber that they quite like, that's otherwise quite difficult to get out of the ground. Now, Tristan was talking about elephant camouflage, I think, earlier, and I think that elephants are camouflaged. I think they're beautifully camouflaged, especially in winter. That's when you want to look at camouflage, everyone. In summer, it tends to be a lot more of hiding behind thick bushes than it is to do with camouflage. In summertime, then you notice camouflage, at least wintertime, when these elephants are moving through the grey sort of September, August vegetation. They disappear. If they're not moving, they can just blend in beautifully. Same with the waterbuck. Lions moving through winter grass disappear completely if they're still. So I think camouflage has got a lot more, certainly for the mammals, is much more important when there ain't trees to hide behind. What a very nice elephant sighting. Good. Well, we'll leave them wandering off into the bushes there. Winter prism, yes, they can be, and certainly I've had the experience of being sneezed upon. You say, are the trunks of elephants wet? The ends of elephant trunks, they can drip quite. I'm indecisive now about where I want to go. I'm going to go this way around just to see if we can't spot Karula. Winter prism, they often drip some kind of liquid. One hesitates to say snot, but yes, I suppose it must be a form of snot. But not always, no. They can be quite dry. I mean, there's probably an element of moisture always, but sometimes they do actually drip bits and pieces of what would appear to be some kind of a snot. Now, Herbert's prediction yesterday was that those leopards would leave there and go up Cheetah cut line, probably into Torchwood, and therefore not around here. But we've done that particular, or we've gone as close to Torchwood as we can go. So I'm just going to drive down this road, which is Leadwood, which some of you will know from the maps, and we'll just see if Karula isn't here. Byron apparently has got a fascinating discussion to have with you, everybody. I can't wait for this, of course. I am really sad that I will not be sharing the discussion of Byron's eyebrows from the tent.
Apparently, my eyebrows seem very happy and they were dancing around, so they've been hidden. James, that's the issue, apparently. Annabelle, thank you for your comment. So the eyebrows are now being hidden. Oh dear. They're back. So there's been a lot going on out there. Nice to see those elephant. Everybody knows I love elephant. I love seeing them. Now I've been thinking, well, it was nice to have a spelling lesson from James, but I've been thinking about this rain. Now, animals I know that like to come out in weather like this, and it depends on the area that you're in, but I'm thinking that we might start seeing a bit of termite activity. We know you get those beautiful alates. They do move around. They'll come out of the hole. They're flying or winged termites, and they'll go off and set up a new colony. Now, animals that enjoy feeding on the alates, we do get them in the area, but they are very, very rare. And I'm a firm believer in that if you put things out into the universe, maybe it will occur and you will see them. So I'm going to put the thoughts of a pangolin and an aardvark out into the universe, and let's see what happens, because they do like weather like this, and they are active in weather like this. This beautiful aardvark. Now, we know how rare these animals are. They generally are strictly nocturnal. They live in termite mounds. Usually they burrow underground. They'll sleep there and then come out at night and go and look for food, and where they dig up termites, and they use a long tongue to basically lick up the termites and feed on them. So weather like this also softens the soil, so you might get, and you do often see it. We've seen tracks here before. There are aardvark in the area. So who knows? Maybe we're lucky and we get to see an aardvark. Wouldn't that be wonderful? James, you want to know if I've had some nice sightings of aardvark before? I have indeed, James. Not in this area. The only 2 sightings of aardvark I've had in this area, one was unfortunately being eaten by a pride of lions, and the other one was actually killed by a leopard and hoisted up into a tree. But I've guided guests, and I take guests quite often to the Kalahari, and there I've been very fortunate and seen a lot of I've seen lions, but aardvark around there too. And it's funny, the temperature variation in the Kalahari is very, very high. So you'll go from extreme heat in the summers to extreme cold in the winters. It will get below 0 Celsius, very, very cold. So, but because of that, the aardvark generally become more active during the day, like late afternoon when the sun is still out, while it's still a little bit warm. It's not those frigid temperatures that it gets to in the evenings. And we've seen aardvark many times on drive during the afternoon, late afternoon, and it's incredible to see them during the day. And if you are fortunate, you can follow them on foot at times if the weather is correct. And it's like any animal, if the wind rather. If the wind is in your favor and they can't hear you or smell you, they generally don't pick up on you following them, because their heads are always down and they're looking for termites and they're constantly digging and foraging for ants and termites. So I've followed aardvark on foot before, an incredible experience. So it's something very different. Also in that area, I've seen pangolin, and that's why I thought we'd put pangolin out there too. Why not? You never know. We have seen pangolin in this area before. Let me just find it for you quickly. I'll show you what it looks like. Those of you who are unsure what a pangolin looks like. A scaly anteater. It's also known as a scaly anteater. There we go. Now, I've been very fortunate to see quite a number of pangolin. Once in the Sabi Sands. I've only seen one here, but up in the Kalahari, again, different parts of southern Africa, I've seen quite a few. Also nocturnal, also feed on termites and ants, so they incredibly rare, and you do not see them often. Some people do not even know about the pangolin, but they are fascinating creatures, and I think so prehistoric with those scales over the body. And again, also being able to see them also during the day, especially in winter. They tend to be a bit more active while they're going around looking for food, especially in those dry Kalahari conditions, in the desert conditions. Very different to these areas that we are in. Food, there's obviously not a huge amount of food, so they've got to go in search of food fairly regularly to be able to support their bodies. Whereas out here, we know all the termite activity, especially after the rain. I think we're going to have a lot of termite activity. So who knows? Maybe aardvark or pangolin could make an appearance. Let's put it out there and see what happens. So, yeah. So, Tim, they're not related to armadillos as far as I know, not at all. Now, I know they look similar. A lot of people, when they see them, they think, oh, are those armadillos? But they, as far as I know, they're not related to armadillos, different family completely. And I know some guests of mine have seen them and they've said, oh, it looks like a giant artichoke. I suppose, and they curl up. They do kind of look artichoke-like, I suppose, maybe, I don't know. Would you say artichoke? Or the other description I've heard is pine cone. They look like a pine cone. And I suppose they do to an extent, especially when they curl up like that. Very interesting little creatures. Well, the rain is still dripping down, and fortunately we are still comfortable in the tent. But hope you've enjoyed the tent with us this morning. It's been great to share some stories with you and a few laughs. From myself and Genre on camera, goodbye. We'll see you all this afternoon. I'll be back on the vehicles, and then we're going to head over to Tristan and have a wonderful day. Goodbye, everyone.
I'm so glad Byron is very comfortable in his tent. He's got coffee, dry. Very, very envious of Byron at this stage. Although we've had really a fantastic morning out here. It's been a beautiful, beautiful start. It was overcast, no rain, really pleasant, and then great sightings. There we had, the Birminghams with the Nkuhuma female, and the Sticks with the cubs, and the elephant bull, and then James with the elephant herd. So it's really been quite a nice morning. And I'm actually quite surprised. I thought we were going to be in for quite a tough morning with the wind and the rain, but it's turned out really, really nice. And like I say, thankfully we are getting some rain. The rain is vitally important and we really need it at this stage. So I'm quite glad that we've received a little bit and that we've started to get some in this area. And as I was saying before, it's that nice, soft, gentle rain, so it should be really good for plant growth, as well as to help fill up a lot of the pans. When you get that really strong driving rain, it all just washes away and we end up getting very little benefit from it. So while we were kind of driving around and James was busy with the elephants, we went and checked towards Twin Dams. Didn't see any signs of Karula. I was hoping to maybe see if we could pick up some tracks down there. No signs of her at this stage, so we'll have to try again this afternoon for her. Maybe she's still hanging around that area where she had that impala kill. I'm sure the guys will go and have a little look this afternoon and see what's happening there. But otherwise it's been quite quiet. A few birds flittering about here and there, but otherwise not too much. Just rain that's getting a little bit stronger and starting to fall quite nicely now. Alright guys, so with that I'm going to say goodbye to you all. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on board. I hope you really enjoyed the morning as much as myself and Dave. We really had a good time this morning, so I hope you guys did too, and we'll go over to Jay for his goodbyes, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you this afternoon for the Sunset Safari.
We're making a run for home, everyone. The weather is becoming slightly more inclement. I suppose it doesn't really matter at this stage of the game. We've had a wonderful drive. Very nice to see all those lions together again. But we are making our way quite solidly, speedily towards the north. Right. Thank you, Aaron, in New Zealand. The Battle of Gallipoli, apparently, yes, First World War. Many Kiwis, many Aussies died, and much blame attributed to some kind of strategy devised by Winston Churchill, who I think at that stage was he the Minister of Defence? He certainly wasn't the Prime Minister yet, I don't think. That's my history. When you try and talk about history, you think you've got it all sorted out in your mind, and then it gets a little bit confused. Thank you for that, Aaron. And when is Anzac Day? I thought it was later in the year. So to all of you Australians, of course, great pity, and I don't know if anyone's mentioned this, but a great pity that we don't have Taylor with us. She is Australian. I know she doesn't sound like it. And apparently Anzac Day is 25th of April. Taylor would be very sad not to have shared Australia Day with you. Her father, an Australian cricketer. Her mother, an Australian woman. 2 minutes left. Rain now starting to sheet out of the sky. Very unpleasant. Are you alright back there, Craig? I didn't tell you, everybody, he says he is getting wet, but he'll survive. The reason he's called the Maltese root canal, of course, is that he had a root canal yesterday, in between drives. Totally uncomplaining. Man didn't sleep a wink the night before, so that's why it's called root canal. I still get, my toes are curling over at the thought of it. As Kirsten says, Batman is so strong. That is absolutely correct. Batman feels no pain. He said, I got a root canal. Got a bit of a pain in my tooth here. It's a root canal. I'm gonna have to have a root canal done, James. Take your drive on your own. Okay, Batman. Good. Right, we have 30 seconds left, everybody. And so from Batman and myself, I say goodbye to you. Thank you for coming on Drive with us. And to all the Australians, I hope you have a wonderful day in Australia. You must be coming to the end of it now, and I hope you celebrated your time with all your family and friends. We'll see you this afternoon at 4 o'clock. Until then, goodbye and stay safe.